The door wasn't supposed to be locked. After 8 years of marriage, I could count on one hand the number of times we'd locked the bedroom door. Once it had been to keep our dog from barging in during an anniversary morning. Another time when Sarah's sister had dropped by unexpectedly, and we wanted a moment of peace. But this was different. The click of the lock on the other side wasn't a small inconvenience. It was a thunderous crack in my chest. It didn't just bar my entry into the room. It barred me from the life I thought I had. The laughter came again, muffled but unmistakable. Hers, light and musical, the way it used to be when I would tell her the dumb jokes she pretended to laugh at, and then as deep and self-assured. A stranger's voice that didn't belong in our house. I didn't think, I acted. My shoulder hit the wood hard. The force rattled in the frame. The lock broke with a sickening crack, and the door swung open violently, slamming against the wall. There they were, Sarah and him, tangled together in our sheets. My sheets, our sanctuary, the place where we had once whispered dreams and promises, now defiled by a stranger's hands. "James!" she gasped, scrambling to pull the sheet over her body, but it was too late. There was no hiding this. Chapter 2. The Stranger. He was younger than me, maybe by 5 or 6 years, and it showed. Tan skin, sculpted muscles, and that irritating swagger. Someone who thought he was invincible. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Him froze amid movement, like a deer caught in headlights. Sarah trembling, her face pale, and me, a storm of rage and disbelief. "Who the hell are you?" I growled, my voice low, but shaking with fury. The stranger opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he scrambled to grab his pants from the floor as though covering himself would somehow undo what had just happened. "Answer me." I roared, taking a step forward. He flinched, his hands fumbling as he yanked his jeans on. "James, stop." Sarah's voice cracked, but I didn't look at her. Couldn't. If I did, I might lose control entirely. "You don't get to talk." I spat, turned my glare to her. "Not right now." The stranger finally found his voice. "Look, man, I didn't know." "Didn't know what?" I interrupted, taking another step forward. "Didn't know she was married. Didn't know this was my house. Didn't know you were sleeping in my bed." His silence told me everything I needed to know. He knew. He just didn't care. Chapter 3. The Calm. I didn't hit him as much as I wanted to. My fists clenched at my sides and my entire body trembled with the effort of restraint. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of making me lose control. "Get out," I said, my voice icy now. He hesitated, glancing at Sarah, who had tears streaming down her face. I said, "Get out." I barked. That did it. He grabbed the rest of his clothes and bolted, nearly tripping over his own feet as he scrambled past me. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house. For a long moment, the room was silent except for Sarah's quiet sobs. I turned to her slowly, and when I finally looked at her, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger. "James, she started, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." Her lips quivered, and she pulled the sheet tighter around herself. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "It didn't mean anything." I laughed then, a cold, bitter sound that even surprised me. "Didn't mean anything." I repeated, "You bring a man into our bed, and you expect me to believe it didn't mean anything?" She reached out, but I stepped back, the distance between us feeling like an insurmountable chasm. "I don't want to hear it right now," I said. "I can't." Without another word, I turned and left the room. The door hung limply on its hinges, a fitting metaphor for what had just happened to my life. Chapter 4. The Plan. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My mind was a whirlwind of rage, betrayal, and a sickening replay of what I'd walked on. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, her hands on him, his laughter, their betrayal. By morning, the initial shock had worn off, replaced by something colder, something sharper. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. No, I was going to destroy them. Sarah thought I would forgive her. That much was clear from the way she tiptoed around me the next morning, her eyes red and swollen from crying. But forgiveness wasn't on the table. Not this time. I started with the basics. I had always been the one to manage our finances, and Sarah had been more than content to let me handle it. She had no idea about the separate account I'd been quietly building for years. By the end of the day, I had moved all our joint savings into that account. She wouldn't see a dime of it. Next, I filed for divorce. I gathered every piece of evidence I had, photos, screenshots, even a copy of the security footage in the front door that showed Tyler entering the house. My lawyer assured me it was an open-end shut case. Adultery was hard to defend against, especially with as much proof. But I wasn't done yet. Chapter 5. Tyler's Downfall. It didn't take long to find Tyler's workplace. A quick search of his social media led me to his gym, where he was a personal trainer. His feed was filled with photos of him flexing, motivational quotes, and of course, half-naked pictures of himself. I compiled everything. The photos of him leaving my house, the messages between him and Sarah, and then I sent it all to his boss. The fallout was swift. Within days, Tyler had lost his job. His reputation as a professional was in tatters, and his client list dwindled to nothing. But I wasn't satisfied with just ruining his career. I wanted him to feel the same humiliation he had caused me. So I sent the evidence to his girlfriend, too. Her response was immediate and visceral. She dumped him, publicly airing his dirty laundry on every platform she could find. By the end of the week, Tyler was a pariah. Chapter 6. Sarah's Reckoning. Sarah didn't see it coming. She thought I was just processing, that my silence was a sign I was considering reconciliation. But she couldn't have been more wrong. The divorce papers hit her like a freight train. She cried, begged, and pleaded with me to reconsider. She promised a change, to make it up to me, to do whatever it took to fix things. But there was no fixing this. "You didn't just cheat on me, Sarah," I said during one of her many attempts to apologize. "You laughed at me in our bedroom. You mocked everything we built together. And I can't forgive that." When the dust settled, she was left with nothing. The house was mine. It had always been mine, inherited from my parents. The savings were gone, tied up in accounts she had no access to, and her friends, once a tight-knit circle, distanced themselves when the truth came out. Chapter 7. Rebuilding. For months, I focused on rebuilding my life. Therapy helped. So, did reconnecting with old friends and finding new hobbies. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. Revenge had been satisfying, yes, but it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I learned to value myself and what I deserved. As for Sarah and Tyler, they became nothing more than a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you betray someone who gave you everything. Chapter 8, The Aftershock. Days turned into weeks, and the house was quieter than it had ever been, but the silence didn't bring peace. Sarah had moved out the day after I served the papers. She had taken only what she could carry, leaving behind the fragments of a life we built together. I wanted the empty rooms, staring at the faded indentations where our furniture had sat, at the walls we painted together one lazy summer weekend. Every corner held memory, and every memory was tainted now. But instead of drowning in the pain, I poured my energy into making the house mine again. I stripped the walls of her presence, painted over the colors she loved, replaced the photos of us with artwork that spoke to me. I rearranged her furniture, bought new bedding, even replaced a mattress. Every small change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Chapter 9. Tyler's Spiral. Ruining Tyler's professional life had been easy, but the real damage came when the ripples spread further. His gym wasn't just his workplace. It was his identity. The moment the scandal broke, client abandoned him and competitors relished in tarnishing his reputation further. I kept tabs on him, not out of obsession, but to ensure he faced the full weight of what he'd done. Social media painted a vivid picture. His confident posts turned sporadic, then stopped altogether. Friends who once tagged him in photos suddenly excluded him. Tyler's perfect little world was crumbling, and I couldn't help but savor the poetic justice. One day, I received a message from his ex-girlfriend. She thanked me, not for ruining Tyler, but for opening her eyes to the kind of man he was. She shared how he had lied to her for years, how he had manipulated her into thinking she was a problem. Knowing that exposing the truth had freed someone else gave me a strange sense of closure. Chapter 10. Sarah's desperation. Sarah wasn't handling the fallout any better. She called me frequently in the first few weeks, leaving tearful voicemails that alternated between apologies and angry accusations. "You're punishing me too much," she cried in one message. "We both made mistakes, James. Don't you think I've suffered enough?" Her audacity almost made me laugh. Suffered enough? She had no idea what suffering was. She hadn't spent sleepless nights replaying every moment of a broken marriage. She hadn't walked into a room filled with laughter, only to find it at her expense. But the final straw came when she showed up at the house one evening, uninvited and unannounced. She looked disheveled, her once perfect appearance marred by the toll of stress and regret. "James, please," she begged, standing on the doorstep like a stranger. "Can we just talk?" I stared at her, the woman I had once loved so deeply. I thought I'd never recover from losing her. But now all I felt was emptiness. "There's nothing to talk about, Sarah. You made your choices." "I was lonely," she blurted out, tears streaming down her face. "You were always at work, always distracted. And that justifies this." I interrupted, my voice sharp. "If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me. You could have left. But instead, you brought him into our home. You laughed at me, Sarah, in my bed. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" Her tears didn't move me. They were too little, too late. I shut the door in her face and locked it, the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. Chapter 11. The Turning Point. Revenge was satisfying, but it wasn't enough to heal the wounds. The house was mine again, but it felt empty. The life I had rebuilt still felt like a shadow of what it could be. I started therapy not because I wanted to forgive Sarah or Tyler, but because I needed to forgive myself for missing the signs, for letting my love for her blind me to the cracks in our marriage, for not being enough, even though I knew deep down that her betrayal wasn't my fault. Therapy was slow, grueling work. It forced me to confront not just the pain of infidelity, but the deeper insecurities I had buried long before Sarah came into my life. Week by week, I peeled back the layers of anger and resentment, replacing them with something new: self-respect. Chapter 12. Building a new life. Months passed, and the anger faded into something quieter. Not forgiveness. Never that. But indifference. I stopped checking Tyler's social media. Stopped wondering what Sarah was doing. They were no longer the center of my world. Instead, I threw myself into new projects. I renovated the house, turning it into a space that felt like me. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned during my marriage. Painting, hiking, even playing guitar I hadn't touched in years. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in ages. People reminded me of the person I was before I became Sarah's husband. They welcomed me back without judgment, and their support was a balm I hadn't realized I needed. Chapter 13. The Closure. The final act of closure came when I ran into Sarah unexpectedly at a coffee shop. She looked different, thinner, her face lined with stress. She hesitated when she saw me, her eyes flickering with a mix of emotions. "James," she said softly, as though testing the waters. "Can I sit?" I nodded, not out of kindness, but curiosity. What could she possibly have to say now? "I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I've said it before, but I don't think I ever really meant it. Until now, I've lost everything because of my choices, and I don't blame you for any of it." Her admission caught me off guard. For the first time, her apology felt genuine, but it didn't change anything. "I appreciate that," I said, my tone neutral, "but it doesn't matter anymore. I've moved on." Her eyes welled up, but she nodded. "I hope you find happiness, James." "I already have," I replied simply. As she walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since that fateful day, I felt free. Chapter 14. Moving forward. Life didn't return to normal. It became something better. The betrayal that had once consumed me was now a distant memory, a scar that reminded me of my resilience. I had survived the worst and come out stronger. And as I sat on the porch of my newly renovated house, the sun setting over the horizon, I realized something profound. The best revenge wasn't ruining Sarah and Tyler's lives. It was rebuilding my own and making it something worth living.